Exterior, back alley, bitter night. Slow push-in on a mittened hand, small and red at the tips, stretching forward into the frame. Breath fogs in the narrow air, a street lamp throwing a tired gold across frozen puddles. A torn coat wraps a small body like a paper bag. In her other hand, a threadbare stuffed rabbit with one ear flopped and a faded button eye, Mr. Marshmallow, sways with emotion. Clara, soft, pearly above wind. "Please, ma'am, could I have some old bread to eat?" The voice is immediate and careful, the kind of voice that practices apologies before they're necessary. The camera lifts to a child of 6, cheeks windburned, eyes the color of something too old for her age, alert, measuring. She holds the question like an offering. Cut 2. Interior bakery back room, same night. Camera from over Amara's shoulder. Warm light floods a small, tidy kitchen where the smell of yeast clings to the air like a hymn. Amara Jackson stands at a metal table, hands dusted with flour. She is practical in a way that softens the world, every motion efficient, every glance cataloging what needs fixing. Amara tries her hands on a towel, hears the small voice through the open back door. Her eyes move to the alley. In the dim frame outside, Clara stands. Amara's face rearranges into something like a decision. "Come here, sweetheart." Amara kneels, not making a show of it, but making space. She unwraps a paper napkin with practiced gentleness and slips inside a crust of day-old rye and a small square of cheese. The napkin smells faintly of cinnamon from an earlier batch of muffins. Camera, close on, napkin bundle as it passes from Amara's palm to Clara's tiny ones. Fingers touch, the contact is understated but heavy with consequence. "Clara," whisper. "My mom's coughing. She hasn't eaten all day." Amara's jaw tightens. The story in those words is a long one, but Amara's response is short and certain. "Amara, take it. Go home. Don't get near the street." Behind them, a door opens. Lauren, the bakery manager, sharp collar, sharper tongue, appears in the doorway, lips forming a line. He watches the exchange with something between annoyance and calculation. "Amara, you told me no handouts. We can't have beggars hanging around the back. It looks bad for business." Amara stands, smoothing flour into an invisible line across her apron. "Amara." "She asked for food, Lauren. I gave her something to eat. It's not a strategy, it's common decency." Lauren's eyes harden. He steps forward, not to the child, but to the rules. "You know the policy. Employees aren't to feed people from the back. We can't afford liability. Can't have people thinking we're running a charity." Amara's voice is quiet, but carries. "We can afford mercy." Lauren's hand lands on a clipboard, the sound small and final. A list is checked off in his head. Disapproving. "Then maybe you shouldn't be here if you can't follow the policy. Someone has to think about the shop."
The word "someone" hangs between them like a wedge. Amara looks at Clara once more. Clara looks back with the solemn trust of a child who has learned the weight of adults' refusals. Amara's mouth tightens. She folds the towel into her apron and puts a hand to her chest as if steadying a sudden ache. "All right, if that's the way it's going to be." Camera pulls out as Lauren closes the door behind him. The warm light of the kitchen yanks away from the cold edge of the alley. Cut 2. Exterior back alley, continuous. Clara nestles the napkin bundle against her coat, breath quick with relief. She starts down the alley, but then slows, something unseen by adults nudging at her. She pauses at the curb, looking toward the street. She hasn't walked far. The city beyond the alley is a spill of headlights and the muffled hum of distant traffic. She takes a step into the street anyway, small and decisive, and the world tilts. From the bakery door, Amara sees it, like a crack of thunder. Her hands move before her brain finishes the sentence. "No!" The next beat happens in heartbeats. Amara charges across the slick pavement, flour-streaked apron flying. Her foot catches on an uneven slab. For a single terrible second, there is the scream of tires from somewhere up the block, a low, surprised sound. A black SUV rounds the corner faster than it should, headlights a sudden white blade. Cut 2, slow motion. Amara launches herself forward. The napkin bundle falls from Clara's hands and skitters across the street like a tiny wounded thing. Amara wraps her arm around Clara, pulling the child downward, her own body taking the rest of the impact. They tumble to the cold, gravel-scraped asphalt. A hand, gloved and affluent, slams on the brakes. The SUV screeches to a halt with inches to spare. The driver's door swings open, and a tall man in a tailored coat steps out, breath visible in the cold air. He moves toward them with that practiced stillness of someone used to control. He kneels, not intrusive, just close enough to check, scanning Clara then Amara with quick, precise glances. Interior POV, Clara. Everything is too bright and too loud. There is the metallic taste of fear, then the warmth that comes when someone covers you. Amara's hand is big over Clara's shoulder, voice a rule and a lullaby. All right, you're okay. Stay with me. Hold on to Mr. Marshmallow. Clara clutches her rabbit. The button eye stares up at someone who will, moments later, hold both their lives in his hands. Cut 2. Exterior street, moments later. The man, Derek Monroe, checks them with an almost clinical calm. He helps them up with a firmness that is not unkind. He speaks with an ease that says he knows how to make a scene stop. All right, call an ambulance, now. Alexa, a passerby who saw the incident, fumbles for her phone. Derek's voice taps into the world like a key. Are you hurt?
Amara swallows, testing the pain that blooms in her side. It's sharp, but not showy. She answers with the kind of honesty that measures responsibility. A scrape. She took a bump. We'll be fine. Derek studies Clara close enough that the child shifts, uncomfortable under the attention. For a moment, his face goes somewhere away from the scene, like a photograph surfacing in deep water. Flash. A memory. Derek's POV. Not a filmed memory, but a brief haunted likeness. A woman at a train station, hair loose, eyes the same as Clara's. A different coat, a different winter. A face he had once kept in the back pages of his life. He feels a pull that is older than this moment. Derek Monroe, under his breath. Where did you say they live? Amara, practical before she is anything else, gives the street name. She wraps a spare blanket around Clara and tucks it under her chin. The ambulance siren arrives like a distant promise. People gather at the periphery, murmuring, protective like a tide. Cut 2. Into, back of ambulance, moving. The ambulance interior is awash of fluorescent blue and white, an antiseptic cradle. Clara's fingers are icy. A paramedic warms a cup of saline and talks to her like a friend. Amara sits on the bench, window to the blur of neon. Pain speaks quietly from her ribs. Derek rides just behind them, hands folded, eyes on the child. He pulls something out of his pocket, a photograph, folded and worn at the edges, as if it had been carried for a long time. He doesn't look at it. He smooths it only with the pad of his thumb, as if asking it for permission. Amara, quiet, to Derek. You called for help. Why are you? Derek Monroe, cutting in, steadier than sympathy. Because I couldn't stand to watch another child in the street. Sit down. They'll check her. Amara's voice is steady, but there's a line of suspicion in it. People in her life have offered help with conditions before. Amara, people with coats like yours are quick to help and quicker to leave. I don't want the show. Derek opens his mouth, then closes it. The ambulance rattles on, the city a smear against the windows. He slips the photograph into the inside pocket of his coat, like a talisman. Cut 2. Into, hospital, emergency room, later. Fluorescent light and the constant low beeping of machines. Nurses move with efficient compassion. Clara sits on an exam table, legs dangling, Mr. Marshmallow hugged tight under her chin. Amara sits nearby, pale and cramped on a plastic chair. Nurse, practical. We'll keep her for observation. She took a hard knock. We'll check for concussion and any internal bruising. The child should be kept calm. Derek stands back a step, unwilling to crowd a small life already complicated by adults. He watches the nurse and then watches Amara. There is a tension in him, something like responsibility trying on a new coat. Nurse, to Amara. Can you give us some information? Emergency contact? Any allergies?
Amara gives Clara's name, then Ellis as the mother. A hush. That name lands in the room like a stone. Ella? Ella Porter? His voice pulls everyone in a little. Not because he's loud, but because the syllables matter. Amara looks up, then at Derek. Yes, Ella Porter. She lives not far from here. Derek's breath catches. He hadn't expected the name to arrive like this, whole and present. The photograph in his coat, the one he fingered in the ambulance, feels suddenly heavier. Cut to flash memory. Derek, a younger Derek, less steady in his shoulders, turning away from a woman on a platform, a letter half tucked into a book, her handwriting, bad at first, and then practiced around hope. He had kept a photograph from those years, a woman with wind in her hair, and a look like she trusted the world to be kinder than it was. Back to scene. Derek's face is a map of things he has been avoiding. The nurse's clipboard makes a small sound as she taps a pen. We can hold her for observation and contact the mother. There are also social services protocols we should notify in case the mother needs support. Do you have contact info? Amara gives the mother's last known phone number, voice steady, although the room feels small. Derek hears a shuffle in the hallway, too many shoes, and an urgency he didn't anticipate. I can help. I can make sure they get immediate care. I'll take responsibility for any costs. Amara's eyes flick to him, assessing. It's a generous offer on its face, but Amara has learned to read generosity like a weather report, something that can change direction without warning. They don't want to be turned into a story. They'll take care of Clara. They don't need to be made into a spectacle. Derek meets her gaze. The charity in his posture is mixed with something deeper, an ache that survived a decade of meetings and flights and boardrooms. He has resources. He also has a memory that won't be quiet. No spectacle, just care. Let me help. Amara studies him, then nods once. It's small but decisive. Okay, but if anyone tries to use this, we don't want a press thing. No cameras, no statements. Agreed. Cut to interior hospital waiting room. Later, the white sheen of the waiting room is a cavern of chairs. Amara paces, then sits, then is still. Derek leans forward between his knees, the photograph finally visible. He unfolds it with hands that betray him, thin lines at the knuckles. The picture is of a younger Ella and a young woman with letters tucked into her arm. The edges are soft from being handled. You knew her. Derek nods, the motion small enough to be private. Long ago, it was a different life. I didn't know she had a child. Amara's laugh is humorless. Life surprises us all. This is her daughter.
Derek looks at Clara through the thin glass of the observation room. The child sleeps now, forehead smudged with dried tears. Something in Derek bends, not yet to confession, but to attention. Where is Ella now? If she needs anything. She's at a shelter on Holloway. She keeps odd hours. She won't come if she thinks authorities are involved. Derek's jaw tightens. He takes a breath that is an attempt at admission. I owe her an apology, and maybe more than words. Amara glances at him. There's a quiet appraisal. People can afford apologies and not change. The room has seen both. Then do something that lasts. Not words. Show up. Derek folds his hands as if trying to make himself smaller around the promise. Outside the glass, a TV in the corner mumbles headlines. The fluorescent hum is constant. Cut to into hospital room night, later. A bed is occupied by Ella Porter. She wakes to the sterile smell and a light pain at the base of her skull, like a memory scraping the inside of her scalp. Her eyes open, bleary and sharp at once. Her gaze pins on the figure at the foot of the bed. Derek, hands folded, the photograph gone now from sight. Get away from her. The words are immediate, a shield delivered with the force of someone who has reheard pain too often to trust its softened versions. They reverberate in the small room like a verdict. Derek straightens, hands lifted in an unthreatening gesture. He hasn't expected this, but he knows the script of being rejected. His life has taught him how to stand in it. Ella, it's me, Derek Monroe. Silence drops like a curtain. Ella's face is a geography of lines, survival etched in. She pushes the blanket tighter under her chin, protective over Clara who sleeps beside her, hair tangled, the rabbit clutched to her chest. You left a long time ago. You don't get to come back when it suits you. Derek takes the bench chair across from the bed. He doesn't try to close the years with excuses. I know. I can't change what I did. I can only try not to hurt you again. Ella's eyes fall to the child. In them is an inventory. Past hurts, practical fear, the calculation of what help would cost her in dignity. She watches Derek as if weighing coins. You know what makes people walk away? They disappear without asking. They assume others will pick up the mess. They make promises out of pity and then vanish.
Her voice has the brittle clarity of someone who learned to guard expectation. Derek, who has spent his life shaping futures for others with reports and strategy, guesses at the shape of the cost. I kept a photograph. I kept it because I couldn't find a safer way to remember. I was a coward. I should have reached out. Ella's laugh is a sharp little thing that doesn't find warmth. A photograph.
You kept a photograph and called that enough. Derek's face goes still. There is no theatrical apology. There is only the long, slow work of words trying to match up to consequence. No, it wasn't enough. I know that. I'm here now to see what I can do. Ella looks at him, and in that look is the sum of years, hungry nights, canceled plans, a child healed and harmed by small mercies. She inhales, the hospital oxygen making a white draw. Stay away from Clara. If you're here to surprise me with platitudes, leave. Derek's fingers curl. I'm not here to take her without consent. I don't want to make you feel smaller. I want, if you'll let me, to help, to make sure she gets care and that you get the support you need. Ella's shoulders roll, a small private resistance. Trust is not something given in a single room. It is earned in the long series of ordinary acts. You can't fix what's already broken with money, Derek. You never could. Derek meets the accusation without flinching. I know what money can't do. I want to do the work. If you'll let me. The nurse pops her head in at that moment, polite and precise. We're going to keep Clara overnight for observation. When she's discharged, we'll want to make sure you have a safe place to go, Ella. There's social services on staff if you want to speak with someone. Ella's expression hardens again at the word social services, an institution that carries both help and stigma. She looks at Amara, who stands patiently near the door. You went back for her. Amara meets Ella with no drama, simply the steady truth of action. I did. Ella's eyes shift between faces, each one a possible future. She looks at Derek, then at Clara asleep, then at Amara. For a moment, the weight of decisions presses in. Choices about boundaries, about pride, about what safety looks like. Cut to hallway outside the room. Derek steps into the corridor and leans his hands against the cool wall. He takes his phone from his pocket, thumb hovering over a name he hasn't called in years. He doesn't dial. Instead, he emails something brief to himself, an old habit for someone who lives by the calendar. Check shelter contacts, no press, no statement. He looks up as a hospital administrator passes in a crisp suit. He says nothing, but his shoulders carry a new smallness, the first kind that shows up when the thing you thought you had under control is suddenly not a spreadsheet. Into hospital night later. Outside, rain begins to fall in a thread here and there, tapping the neon and making the streetlights bleed into the pavement. In the observation room, Clara's small fist loosens around Mr. Marshmallow, and she dreams of better places where pancakes never run out. Amara sits by the bed, chin cupped in her hand, watching. She is bruised, but the bruise is something that will fade with time and care. Her thought is not of reputation or reward. It is small and immediate. Keep this child safe. Clara stirs, opens her eyes and sees Amara's face above hers. She searches the adult lines like one searches maps for a safe harbor. Will she be okay? My mommy? Amara smiles, not too grand, a smile that is mostly promise. We'll make sure she gets what she needs. For tonight, you're going to sleep. I will stand watch. Clara nods against the softness of Mr. Marshmallow, and for the first time in a long stretch of nights, she feels warmth creep into her chest like light finding a room. Cut 2. Interior, hospital, dining area, late. Derek sits alone with a cup of coffee gone cold. He stares into it as if the reflection might contain answers.
His phone buzzes once, a matrix of messages from an assistant, from his brother Preston about an early morning board meeting, from an unfamiliar number flagged as legal counsel. He silences the phone, setting its screen down, like a small, deliberate act of refusing the other life that rises with the sun. Derek Munro, to himself, quietly. Show up. The words are small. They feel like a beginning. Camera pulls back. Hospital at night. Windows glow in rectangles. Inside, lives rearranged by small increments. Outside, the city keeps its breathing. A minute later, somewhere unseeable, Lauren, the bakery manager, keys his phone with a sour, quick confession to a colleague. She was feeding a kid. Fired. We can't have it. The sentence is loud in its pettiness. Somewhere else, a driver who had break that night drives home and tells a friend a compact version of what happened. Crazy lady jumped in front of my car, scared the hell out of me. No one mentions the napkin bundle. Within the hospital, a decision has been made that will ripple far past the fluorescent lights. Derek will use influence to secure immediate care. Amara will stay the night. Ella will wake to old ghosts, and Clara will sleep clasping a rabbit. And in the small core of that sleeping child, something tiny and immovable takes root. The knowledge that someone acted for her when she asked for old bread. It is a seed that will shape the way she learns to trust the world. Cut to black.
In a corner, a small administrative team texts. Anonymous donor offered to cover immediate costs, no press. The words travel across screens and land like offers with strings attached no one can see yet. Amara overhears this and freezes. She meets Derek's eyes across the room, a silent negotiation of principles and gratitude. Paid care is good, paid with strings is not. Derek hears her and meets the judgment in her tone without flinching. No strings, I want to help. Soft. Then help the way people who have been helped teach, quietly. Keep promises that last. A nurse appears with paperwork. The room recalibrates into the hum of administration. Yet in the small human sphere where Clara sleeps, there is a fragile new order forming. A woman who chose to act, a child who asked, a man who has to reckon with the past. Cut to. Ext hospital, night, later. Derek steps out for air. Rain has stopped. He unfolds the photograph again, fingers tracing the faces. It is a private relic in a public moment. He notices a stretched limo idling across the street, dark glass like eyes. He doesn't belong to the street or the hospital in the way Amara does. His life is built of appointments and reputations. The choice to be present will cost him in ways that are not yet clear. He tucks the photograph away and walks back inside. End hospital room, night. Ella sits upright now, awake and watching her daughter, who sleeps with an expression that finally looks smaller than the day. Ella wraps Mr. Marshmallow a little tighter, almost like protecting a keep. She looks at Amara and Derek in turn, one a fierce practical shelter, the other, a man with a coat that costs more than a month's rent. Ella Porter, to Amara, quietly. Thank you for going back. We do what we can, one night at a time. Ella nods. It is not a full opening, but it is the first creak of a hinge long stiff. Clara, in sleep, murmuring. Pancakes. Her dream turns to simple warmth. She doesn't know the legal battles, the whispers, the boardrooms where her life will become a liability or a cause. She only knows that someone caught her. That knowledge, small and luminous, will rearrange the architecture of her inner life. Cut to. End hospital, night, corridor.
Derek stands as a doctor passes. He quietly makes a call, measured, precise. His voice is low. Into phone. No press. I want only the child's safety. Arrange for an overnight room for the mother, and find me the social outreach contact at Holloway. Quietly. The voice on the line replies with the efficiency of the well-resourced. Softening. Good. And keep this out of tonight's briefing. I will handle it. He folds himself into the shape responsibility now requires. Outside, the city breathes. Cut to. And hospital, late night. Ella rests, eyes closed. The wound lines are not dramatic but precise. Fatigue. Amara watches her breathe.
The screen blooms with messages. A terse note from Preston Monroe, subject line, PR exposure, and another from his assistant. Board meeting 8 a.m. Preston insists on immediate statement. Derek's thumb hovers. He taps a reply. No press, no statement. Arrange meeting with counsel. He walks to the elevator, jaw set like a hinge. Cut to. Into bakery, day. A battered smartphone sits on the counter. Lauren, sleeves rolled, scowls at the device. He watches a grainy clip on social media. A short clip of Clara at the alley with a blurred bakery interior. Someone has added a caption. Bakery worker feeding street kids? Where are the owners? Nobody has named names, but it circulates with the hungry speed of outrage. Lauren's face tightens. Petty vindication warms him. I told them. Can't have it. People love a scandal. He scrolls, sees a comment. This bakery should be shut down. He types back a curt, clipped reply that reads like a defensive wound. Cut to. Into corporate tower, Preston Monroe's office, day. Glass-faced and cold. Preston Monroe sits behind a desk as if to contain a storm. He watches a wall of feeds, the clip from the bakery, a headline about wealthy philanthropist linked to street child, and an internal memo summarizing risk for the company foundation. His jaw is tight. He picks up a phone and calls a PR advisor. Controlled. Get me context. Find everything on the mother. Make it look like a risk to Derek. Frame it as a charity distraction. We can plant a narrative, show questionable shelter history, frame the reunion as opportunistic. It'll neutralize sympathy. Preston's hand flattens on the desk. He has the skill of someone who can make other people's reputations into currency. Do it, quietly. I want the board thinking about stability. He hangs up and opens a drawer. It contains neat stacks of memos and a framed family photo. His reflection in the glass looks like a man used to winning arguments with other people's lives. Cut to. Into hospital, family room, afternoon. Derek, Amara, and Ella sit around a small table, the hospital's coffee machine hissing in the background. Judith Vaughn, a lawyer with precise eyes and a no-nonsense tone, arrives with a folder of papers. She lays out a slim stack, a proposed protective order, contact lists for child services, and a legal strategy mapped in concise bullets. Steady. There are 2 immediate threats. 1. A PR smear that could make social services overreact. 2. Your brother's attempts to weaponize this against the foundation. We need to control the narrative and preserve your privacy. Ella studies Judith as if testing an unfamiliar tool. Who are you to decide this for me? Compassionate, firm. I'm here to make sure your choices are yours. I represent you.
We file for a temporary protective order preventing any unauthorized footage or contact. We ask the court to recognize Clara's immediate safety needs. If there is a question of parental relation, we can do an expedited paternity test with court safeguards. Derek shifts in his seat, the plan hitting him like a ledger. Do what it takes. No press, no leak. Judith nods and flips one of the papers to show a page where no contact order and privacy protections are typed in clean statute language. I'll draft. We file today if you agree. Amara looks between them, her face a map of practical decisions. Whatever we do it so Clara doesn't have to feel like a headline. Judith's pen hovers, a small commitment becoming official. Cut to. Into newsroom, late afternoon. A producer flips through emails, the bakery clip, a tip from an anonymous source, and a file from a PR firm that has been quietly offering background analysis. The producer senses the hook, a wealthy man's involvement, an abandoned past, a child in peril. The camera in the newsroom hums with appetite. See if there's anything on the foundation. Make sure we have something human for the segment. There's chatter, anonymous posts, a tip about a woman named Ella Porter. We'll verify. Unseen to them, their work will be fed into a public feed that will pull at the threads Preston is already tugging. Cut to. Into hospital, room, evening. A nurse brings a small tray, soup and toast, the kind of food that mends small bodies. Clara eats, a slow and careful motion,
as if leaning into a new grammar of abundance. Ella watches her. The scar tissue of mistrust flutters, but the act of eating is a change. By the bed, Amara tucks a corner of the blanket, smoothing a crease like she smooths the edges of a life. "You like it?" "It's warm." Amara smiles. The warmth is not flashy. It is an honest domestic heat. "We arranged a short-term room at Harbor House, private, no press. I want to make sure you can rest, and that Clara has routine." Ella looks at him. The offer sits between them like a measured bridge. "We need time. I won't have people barging in. No cameras." Derek nods. "Understood. I will make sure." Cut 2. Into Harbor House, short-term room, night. A small rented room, with a kettle on a lamplit table. A child's drawing taped to the wall by a volunteer gives the space an unpolished charm. Clara curls into a borrowed quilt, Mr. Marshmallow tucked into her arms. Ella suckles small routine, a cup of warm milk, a whisper of story. The velveteen rabbit book sits on the bedside table. "Real isn't how you are made," said the skin horse. "It's a thing that happens to you." Clara listens, eyes wide in the glow of a single lamp. The line lands like a gentle rule about becoming.
Will Mr. Marshmallow be real? He's as real as you make him, and as long as someone holds him for you, he will feel real. Amara stands in the doorway watching them. The room vibrates with the small rituals that begin to build trust. Cut 2. In-T corporate boardroom, day. A massive table, cold glass, and men in dark suits. Preston sits rigid. He opens a tablet and plays out a short clip, a contextless snip of Derek in a hospital beside a woman who is introduced as charity case. The board murmurs. Preston's argument is surgical. We can't have the Foundation's chair embroiled in personal matters. It poses a risk to donors and to our mission. We need to distance. This isn't a press opportunity. This is a child in need. We will not weaponize tears as policy fodder. Preston's jaw tightens. The board looks between power and prudence. A vote is called to convene an ethics review, not to punish Derek, but to assess conflict of interest. It discomforts Derek more than it angers him. Cut 2. In-T Judith Vaughn's office, day. Judith and a small team of counsel review a folder of materials. An investigator, Marco, spreads timestamps on the table, email headers, server logs, a contract linking a PR firm to Preston's inner circle. Marco points to a line of chain of custody details that show the PR firm received instructions the same morning Lauren's clip went viral. This shows coordination. We can subpoena logs, we can trace IPs. If Preston authorized this, we have a chain. Judith Vaughn firm. We proceed with caution. File the emergency protective order. Then we go public, on our terms. We secure the paternity test with confidentiality. We prepare an interview that includes documents and affidavits. She looks up at Ella, who has been listening with a soldier's guardedness. We will control the release. If you choose to speak, we'll put the records in order so the truth is not scattered. Ella regards the map of legalities like a new language she must learn quickly. I don't want my life turned into a spectacle, but I want the truth to be clear. Then we make it clear. We let the facts speak louder than gossip. Cut 2. In TV studio, day. A long-form interview set. Soft lights, an interviewer with a steady reputation, a small audience. Cameras roll. Judith arrives with a sealed packet of evidence, hand-copied letters Ella once wrote, a set of photographs Derek kept, and a digital file from Marco showing the PR emails and timestamps. On-air interviewer. Ella, you agreed to speak because you wanted to set the record straight. What do you want people to see? Ella Porter. I want them to see my daughter. I want them to know that she is a child, not a prop. I want the things that happened to my family to be shown for what they are, a past that didn't protect us.
Derek sits beside them, hands folded. He looks at Ella not like a subject, but like someone he owes patience to. I made mistakes. I kept a photograph and thought that was enough. It wasn't. I'm here to support Ella and Clara in ways she accepts, not in ways that make her smaller. The interviewer shifts, turning to Judith. Ms. Vaughn, you brought documents? Judith places a sealed envelope on the small table. The camera captures the moment, the weight of paper that can reframe narrative. We have correspondence showing attempts to intercept letters and a PR timeline that suggests deliberate attempts to smear the mother and shape a corporate narrative. We also have an independent lab's expedited DNA test confirming Derek Monroe is Clara's biological father, performed under court supervision to protect privacy. Murmurs rise. The live audience leans forward. The footage cuts to shots of the documents, the letters Ella wrote years ago, the photograph Derek kept, and an email chain that names Preston as requesting damage control. The segment airs, edited with respect. Documents are shown, witnesses testify without sensationalism, and the story centers on Ella and Clara's dignity. Cut to. Into. Social media feeds. Montage. The interview runs and is clipped, shared with headlines that favor clarity. Woman reunites with daughter, wealthy philanthropist admits past. Comments flood in, empathy, support, and calls for accountability. The earlier anonymous smear begins to fray under the weight of documented evidence. Cut to. Into. Preston Monroe's office. Day. Preston watches the interview with clenched fists. He sees his carefully laid narratives unraveling under the clarity of documents and a measured interview. His inbox fills with messages from board members. We need transparency. Step aside pending investigation. His options narrow. He picks up the phone, considers a statement, and then, with a small private cruelty, drafts a terse resignation letter, worded like, stepping down to focus on personal affairs, then deletes it. Instead, the board calls an emergency meeting and, after review of the evidence and legal counsel recommendations, votes to place Preston on immediate leave pending investigation. Cut to. Into. Courtroom. Day. A modest courtroom. Cameras are present but kept back by agreement. A judge reads with steady cadence. Judith stands with Ella and Derek. The prosecutor reads evidence summaries, the PR emails, the DNA result, and Marco's chain of custody affidavit tracing the smear back to Preston's directive. On the basis of presented evidence, I will issue a temporary order recognizing the child's need for protected custody and grant a protective order preventing any unauthorized publication of photographs or health records. The court also recognizes Mr.
Monroe's parental claim pending further family proceedings and approves expedited hearings on custody and visitation supervised by the Family Services Office. The language is legal and steady. It is neither theatrical nor vengeful, simply an instrument of protection. Ella exhales like someone who has carried weight and finally set it down a fraction.
You like them better with extra syrup, huh?
Yes. Amara watches from the sidelines, satisfaction plain but not showy. Derek stands a bit apart, eventually joining them. He helps with plates rather than speeches. The moment is not staged. It is a practice in ordinary care. Cut to interior newsroom, day. Preston's leave turns into an investigation. Whistleblowers from the PR firm provide signed affidavits and internal memos showing directives to shape narrative. The company board, facing reputational risk, votes to suspend Preston indefinitely, opening a formal inquiry. Cut to interior family court, day, months later. The courtroom is quieter now, the frenzy settled into records. A family judge looks on as legal paperwork is filed. An agreement recognizing Derek's paternity and transferring guardianship steps towards a formal adoption process with full consent procedures and protections for Ella's rights. Judge, firm but kind. The court recognizes the best interests of the child include stable, loving care. The parties have agreed to a plan of parental recognition with supervised transition, counseling for trauma, and a family reunification plan. The court will approve a guardianship arrangement to be reviewed in 90 days. The legal language is careful. It acknowledges needful structure and protects Ella's parental agency. It's not a fairy tale. It's an accountable process. Cut to interior Ella and Clara's apartment, morning. A small kitchenette, sunlight like a warm hand on the table. Ella stands on a pan, flipping waffles with a practiced efficiency. Amara sits at the table with a stack of pancakes between them and a chipped mug of coffee. Clara sets the table with tiny plastic cups. Ella Porter, to Clara. Mr. Marshmallow needs his breakfast too. Clara giggles, placing a small napkin by the rabbit. The Velveteen Rabbit sits upright on the chair, button eye tilted like a witness to survival. Amara, playful. Tomorrow we'll try waffles. Pancakes are good training wheels. Derek Monroe, entering with a small bouquet of supermarket flowers. Thought you might need these. They smell like morning. Ella takes them without ceremony, arranging them in an old jar. The scene is ordinary, a household learning to be family. Clara, sudden. Yes. When I asked for old bread, did you think someone would jump to save me? Ella studies her daughter, the question unpacking like a heavy box. Soft. I didn't know. But someone did. And sometimes, people show up, even when you don't expect them. That's how you learn to trust. Clara thinks it over and bites into her pancake, syrup sliding down small fingers. She learns in practice that the world can answer. Cut to exterior community lot, late afternoon. A modest ribbon is strung across double doors. A crowd of neighbors, volunteers, and a small press contingent gather. A sign reads, Porter Outreach Center, in honor of Ella Porter. Volunteers hang a small plaque dedicating the center to families rebuilt with dignity. Derek steps up to a small podium. He does not make it about himself. He makes it about ongoing commitment. This center will provide case-managed housing, emergency food, counseling, and legal aid. It will be governed by a community board with representation from people who have lived experience, so decisions are made with those they affect. He gestures to Ella in the front row, who stands with Amara and Clara. The camera catches her eyes, still guarded, but open to the fact of community. This isn't a payday or a show. It is a promise kept publicly. To Miss Porter and to her daughter, we will be accountable. He cuts the ribbon. The small crowd applauds. Volunteers usher people into the center, where a kitchen hums and a small room for children is already painted with gentle colors. Cut to interior Porter Outreach Center, day. Children play with blocks. A notice board lists volunteers and services. Amara stands at the intake desk, her presence practical and kind. A volunteer leans in, grateful. You started here. I started by doing the little things. Someone fed a kid. Now we feed more. Her tone carries the quiet pride of a person who has learned to keep showing up. Cut to interior courtroom, day, finalization. A clerk slides a certificate across the table, legal adoption papers. Derek, Ella, and Clara sit together, hands linked on the table. The judge signs. The language finalizes parental recognition and adoption with clauses protecting Ella's rights and ensuring ongoing counseling and support. The legal end is not a magical fix, but a stabilization. By the authority vested in this court, I recognize the adoption and direct that the child be provided with the protections of this order. The state's welfare office will remain engaged for ongoing support.
Ella's chest rises and falls in a breath that tastes like the end of a long climb. This doesn't make the past okay, but it's something that will help us build a life. Derek meets her gaze, humility in his expression, not triumphant, but earnest. I will keep working to make it better, every day. Cut 2. Interior Ella and Derek's house, kitchen, morning. A new home, not grand, but warm. Pine-smelling logs and a small stove, a recipe card taped to the fridge with pancakes Amara's way. Clara sits at the table with Mr. Marshmallow propped in a booster, syrup dripping down small hands. The velveteen rabbit book sits open on the counter. Amara, flipping a pancake. Don't forget the blueberries. Ella, pouring coffee. He likes blueberries. Derek sits a small wooden spoon on the table and chuckles. The rhythm of domestic rituals shapes the scene.
Derek Monroe. We had a board meeting today to finalize the oversight committee. It's small, but real. That's a start. Clara looks up, serious in the way children can be about important matters.
When I asked for old bread, I didn't expect this.
Ella kneels to look her in the eye. Ella Porter.
Sometimes the small asks are the most important. You asked for what you needed, and someone listened.
Amara reaches over and squeezes Clara's shoulder. The gesture is ordinary and enormous at once.
And you learned it's okay to ask. That's something not everyone learns. Cut 2. Into Porterhouse, evening. A backyard dinner under small string lights. A simple table. Pancakes have turned into waffles tonight, and Amara's specialty. Neighbors, volunteers, and a small handful of staff from the center join. Laughter is low and steady. Clara runs between chairs, Mr. Marshmallow tucked under her arm. The smell of pine from the yard and the soft clink of plates creates the sound of home. To small things, and to the people who do them. They smile. The moment is not epical, but it is cumulative. The slow building of trust through consistent presence. Cut 2. Into Porter Outreach Center, day, montage. Amara teaching a morning class on budgeting and cooking. Volunteers repairing a door, hands working together like a choir. Clara drawing at a table, children's art taped to a wall. Mr. Marshmallow depicted under a sun. Judith arriving with legal forms and sitting at a pro bono table to help another mother sign paperwork. Each cut shows the ripple effect of one small action, the napkin bundle, the rescue, the choosing to stay. Cut 2. Ella's bedroom, night. Ella sits on the edge of the bed, Mr. Marshmallow clean and perched on the shelf. She writes in a small notebook a list of things she wants to teach Clara. How to fry an egg, how to hold a boundary, how to ask for help. She stops and reads, then adds, how to give help without making it a story. She closes the notebook and looks to the doorway where Amara stands, a teapot in hand. You okay? I'm learning. We all are. They share a look. Comradeship born in the trenches. Cut 2. X2 Porter Outreach Center, ribbon cutting ceremony, day. The sign hangs newly painted, Porter Outreach Center, honoring the resilience of families. A small plaque bears words, in honor of the courage of those who ask and the people who answer. A child tugs Derek's sleeve. He crouches to tie a shoelace. He looks up and sees Ella, Amara, Clara, and volunteers lined up. Cameras are present, but the focus is on the work. A new clinic room, a legal aid desk, a kitchen with a small commercial oven. This center will be governed with transparency. A community board, people who have lived this life, will decide programming. We will fund training and emergency care.
We will not be users of pain for image. Applause is modest. The moment is not triumphalism, it's accountability made visible. Cut 2. Into Ella and Clara's living room, night. The house is quiet. Clara sits on the couch with Mr. Marshmallow, now patched at one ear. Ella opens the Velveteen Rabbit and reads the line again, the paragraph a quiet liturgy. Ella Porter, reading softly. Real isn't how you are made, said the skin horse. It's a thing that happens to you. Clara listens, then looks up, serious in the way children can be about wisdom. Clara, so being real is like when someone helps you and doesn't leave? Ella Porter, smiling. Yes, being real is when people stay. They don't leave you in storms. Clara folds her small fingers around the rabbit and nods. The idea finds a place in her bones. Clara, then Mr. Marshmallow is real. Ella Porter, he's very real. They laugh softly. The night presses close and safe. Cut 2. Into City Hall, small hearing room, day. A formal hearing reviews the PR firm's conduct and Preston's role. The PR firm issues a public apology, An internal audit leads to reforms in how corporate communications are handled. Preston accepts responsibility. Stepping down language is used, and faces internal sanctions by the company board. There is no wish for humiliation. There is accountability and structural change. Cut to into Porter Outreach Center. Day, weeks later. A mother lets go of her child's hand at the center's front door, stepping into a meeting with a counselor. Amara watches, then turns to take a clipboard and seat herself at the intake desk. Her work continues, practical and present. A woman approaches, eyes wet and honest. Woman, uncertain. I saw the center on the news. I don't know how to ask for help. Amara, simple. You start by saying that, then we'll figure out the rest. The woman's shoulders relax a fraction, as if a small lock has been undone. Cut to into Derek Monroe's office. Evening. Derek closes a file on the desk, a quarterly report, revised with transparency metrics and community oversight statements. He looks at a small framed photo of Clara with a syrup-smeared chin and smiles, a man who has traded hubris for the steady work of presence. He picks up his phone and texts, "Tonight, pancake guard duty?" with a winking emoji. He hits send. Cut to exterior, backyard, night. String lights. The family sits at a long table. Laughter mingles with the scent of pine and lavels. Clara falls asleep at the table and is carried inside by Ella, who tucks her under a soft blanket. Mr. Marshmallow is tucked into the crook of Clara's elbow. Amara, to Derek, quietly. You did the paperwork. You came back. Derek meets her gaze. Derek Monroe. I will keep coming back. Not for redemption, but for repair. Ella hears and nods, the words a small ledger accounted for. Ella Porter, to Clara, as she tucks her in. You asked for whole bread. You said the thing that needed to be said.
Clara, half asleep, smiles and murmurs. We got pancakes. And something else. We got people who stay. She closes the door gently and rests her hand on the frame, feeling the small vibration of peace like a pulse. Cut to NT Porter Outreach Center, day, epilogue montage. A whiteboard with a calendar full of classes, Parenting 101, Legal Aid, Job Training. Amara teaching a cooking class, laughing as a teenage volunteer flips pancakes the wrong way. Judith and a volunteer lawyer hosting a legal clinic for mothers. Clara at a small desk painting, her art now hung in the center's children's corner. A plaque on the wall, Porter Outreach Center, opened with love, accountability, and presence. Narrator, soft, compassionate. From a handful of old bread to a community that listens, what begins as a single act of mercy can become a scaffold for lives. The people who chose to stay, who chose routine over headlines, created a place where dignity could take root again. Cut to NT Ella and Clara's bedroom, night. Clara sleeps with Mr. Marshmallow tucked under her arm. Ella sits nearby reading The Velveteen Rabbit again, tracing the printed lines with a finger. Amara stands in the doorway with a cup of tea. Derek appears in the hall and closes the door quietly behind him. They share a look, no grand statements, only the steady fact of presence. Ella Porter, whisper, thank you for staying. Derek Monroe, thank you for letting me. Amara, we'll keep pancakes on hand. Clara in sleep turns and murmurs, the last grammar of the night. Don't go. The adults hear the plea not as panic, but as an education. They answer in a language children recognize, with the ritual of staying. Cut to XT Center, sunset. The small house front glows. Parents and children pass through the doors. Volunteers lock up. A plaque above the door gleams softly in the last light. Porter Outreach Center, where asking is met with care. Narrator. From a handful of old bread to a woman answered. That answer started a sequence. Rescue, recognition, accountability, and the slow rebuilding of trust. The lesson that stayed with the child was not heroic speech or sweeping change. It was simpler. When someone answers you, when they show up and do the small things, meals, presents, truth, the architecture of a life can be remade. Showing up matters, staying matters, and that knowledge, small and steady, is life-altering.
Cut 2. NT living room, night, closing image. A close shot. Mr. Marshmallow sits on the couch beside a framed drawing of a pancake. The camera pulls back slowly to show the family. Ella reading, Derek at her side, Amara knitting, Clara asleep with a damp syrup smile. The strings of lights outside blink like patient stars. Text on screen. If this story touched you, subscribe and share, and tell us in the comments one small way you can show up this week. Fade out.